The Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. In a decisive step, Iraqi military says it has taken control of Kirkuk and its provincial government headquarters using heavy artillery. Using at least 7 Kurdish soldiers, the Iraqi military announced that it has successfully conquered the area of Kirkuk, which contains a vast amount of oil wells and commercial areas of interest to both economies. On September 25th, the Kurdish independence referendum won a resounding majority, and this is a response to that referendum. Joining us now to discuss these developments is Patrick Cockburn. He is a Middle East correspondent for The Independent. He is among the most experienced commentators on Iraq. He has written 4 books on the subject. His latest is The Age of Jihad. Thanks for joining us today, Patrick.
Thank you.
So, Patrick, earlier today, the Kurdish leader, Masoud Barzani, was denying that Iraqi military has what it has been claiming, a victory in Kirkuk. And the Iraqi Prime Minister, Haider al-Abadi, ordered the national flag be hoisted over Kirkuk and other disputed areas. So, who is currently in control of Kirkuk?
The Iraqi security forces seem to have taken the city. I mean, it's been a pretty astonishing day. This operation began early in the morning. We had expected, the Iraqi army would try to advance, but not that it would take Kirkuk city and the province around it with the big oil fields. So this is a really sort of very important moment in the history of Iraq, if not the Middle East, because the Kurds have been looking for their independence for a long time. If they were going to get some independence, they would have had to hold Kirkuk and its oil wealth, and they've lost it, and they've lost it very quickly. What's also pretty astonishing is, there were thousands of Kurdish fighters known as Peshmerga in Kirkuk, and they don't seem to have fought. There seem to have been, I think you said 7 killed. So the question is, why didn't they fight, and why was the Iraqi victory so quick?
So that is the question then. Why did they not fight back?
Well, I think the reason is that the Kurdish leadership was divided. They always were divided. In eastern Kurdistan, you have a party called the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, and founded by somebody called Jalal Talabani. In Western Kurdistan, you have President Masoud Barzani and his Kurdistan Democratic Party. They in the 90s they fought a civil war against each other. They've always been rivals. They always sort of talked about uniting, but they had their own armies, their own intelligence services, their own economies, and one of the parties, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, seems to have reached some accommodation with Baghdad that it wasn't going to fight the Iraqi troops coming in. So the resistance collapsed very quickly. But this is really pretty surprising, because people thought that if the Iraqi army did try to advance, then the Kurds would fight back very strongly.
Patrick, there was quite a bit of controversy among the leadership of the Kurds about the timing of the independence referendum, whether this was a good time to have it. And Barzani went ahead and held it anyway. And some say it was to consolidate his power and his leadership of the Kurdish people at this time. Now, Baghdad objected to it, Iran objected to it, and of course we know that the Turkish leader Erdogan has spoken out against it, and including allies like the United States didn't advise it, but Barzani went ahead and did it anyway. Why?
Yeah, I mean, nothing good for the Kurds. President Barzani held this referendum in September. He was warned not to do it by pretty well everybody, actually, including people who don't like each other, like the United States, Iran, Turkey, the central government in Baghdad, pretty well everybody else. The only people in favor of it were Israel and Saudi Arabia. So this alienated the Kurds' allies, and it really enraged Baghdad, because this referendum took place in disputed territories, including Kirkuk. So this was really a claim by the Kurds for permanent occupation of the oil fields. And the Kurds had clearly miscalculated. I've talked to various Kurdish leaders about that today. Clearly miscalculated the reaction to this referendum. The Iran, Turkey, the Baghdad government got together. They're closing the borders. And this raised the issue of Kirkuk. And the Iraqi army, had won a pretty significant victory against Islamic State, against ISIS in July, when it finally captured Mosul after a 9-month siege. So its morale was pretty high. And it's pretty amazing that the Barzani and the Kurds should have chosen this moment for a confrontation with Baghdad. It wasn't just amazing, but it was a disastrous decision. And one Kurdish veteran leader was telling me today that he thought that this was one of the classic miscalculations of Iraqi history. He cited Saddam Hussein's decision to invade Kuwait in 1990 as another example of this. And it certainly has had a disastrous consequence for the Kurds.
Patrick, the Iraqi Kurdistan is landlocked, and if its neighbors are not in support of its independence, definitely it could be stifled in terms of its economic activity and therefore stifling an ability to govern. Did that have anything to do with the Kurds standing down?
Not yet, but it's a good point. This is what's going to happen next, I think, because the Turkish government announced today that it was handing over control of probably the most important border crossing into Kurdistan, which is from Turkey. Kurdistan has Turkey to the north, Iran to the east, Syria to the west, and the rest of Iraq to the south. Now, a lot of the traffic comes over the bridge from Turkey, and the Turks say they're handing over control on these border areas to Iraqi government officials. So the Kurdish area, the Kurdish enclave, which has a population of around 5 million, will be completely cut off. It's entirely landlocked, and it's entirely surrounded by states that are hostile to it and cooperating against the Kurds.
Right. And you said that Saudi Arabia and Israel were perhaps one of the only two nations that actually supported an independence movement in Kurdistan. Why is that so?
Well, the Israelis have always supported it, I think partly because it meant that the Kurds, who are not Arabs, would be a sort of disruptive element in the Middle East. Maybe that was as they thought that was in Israel's interest. Saudi Arabia, because they're a big Sunni state, the Iraqis are Shia. They don't particularly want to see Iraq becoming a stronger state. But everybody else in the region and internationally was against this referendum.
Patrick, as you have said, the Kurdish Peshmerga forces have fought shoulder to shoulder with Iraqi troops in the past, especially against ISIS earlier this year in the city of Mosul. Now the Iraqi army is attacking the Peshmerga positions and have conquered the area. Explain these developments and what happened and what will become of this relationship.
Well, I think what's really changed and what's important is the balance of power is different. You know, 2014, the Iraqi army was defeated by ISIS. It lost the great city of Mosul. So it was very much on the back foot. The Kurds also, Peshmerga also got defeated by ISIS. But so I think they underestimated that the Iraqi army has got a lot stronger. It was able to capture Mosul after this very long siege. So I think they just underestimated its strength. You know, in the last couple of days, they've been trying to avoid a war, but they knew they were the weaker side on the ground, and they knew they didn't have any allies, but it got too late.
Right. All right. What now? What can we look forward to?
Good question. Well, Baghdad is strengthened. They control Kirkuk oil province. The Kurdish leader Barzani has suffered a big defeat, but probably he'll stay in business because he is a sort of feudal leader and so he'll probably stay there. Then we'll see. You know, one thing, we had President Trump's speech last Friday, which was very hostile to Iran, and people want to see, is the US going to have permanent bases in Iraqi Kurdistan? Something that probably wouldn't go down too well in Baghdad or indeed in the other neighbors. We'll also have to see, you know, what happens in Syria, and is the Islamic State out of business? You know, the US was issuing statements today saying everybody should focus on defeating Islamic State, ISIS. And it's, you know, it's lost Mosul in July. It's pretty well losing Raqqa. I'll probably lose it in Syria in the next few days. But, you know, it still has, it's still a pretty fearsome organization. It's, you know, it's moved into hideouts in the desert and so forth. But I think it's looking for these divisions in Iraq and Syria, divisions elsewhere in order to try and make a comeback. And it's not completely out of business.
All right, Patrick, I understand you're heading back to Iraq and Kirkuk. So I wish you all the best and look forward to your report when you come back.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.